Hi, everyone. I'm Derek Slager. I'm the CTO and co-founder at Amperity. We're a customer data platform that serves many large retailers, some legacy, some modern. We work with Kroger, Patagonia, Tom's, Dick's Sporting Goods, Tapestry, and many others, and help them really tie together all their first-party data and build the data foundation to power their future of retail and e-com. And I'm excited to introduce you all to Morgan Chemij today. He is the head of North America e-commerce marketing at HP. And he oversees all of acquisition and retention marketing across everything HP does for direct to consumer. So, Morgan, great to talk to you. If you could just give a quick introduction and background to what you do for HP.
Yeah, Derek, thanks for the opportunity. So my team is effectively responsible for all of our acquisition marketing across your traditional DR channels, paid search, product listing ads, display, affiliate, etc. And then we're also responsible for CRM, so our email program as well as our loyalty program. And then finally, we also handle the third-party marketplaces, and so that's the store within a store. So HP selling on Walmart, Newegg, eBay, etc. So pretty great team and pretty great body of work that we're able to execute here day in day out.
Claire mentioned that HP is a legacy brand. I took that as a compliment, but I would imagine everybody in this session today has some experience with the HP brand, and some of those experiences may go way back to a particular PC they owned or a particular printer that they've used. What is HP today in 2021, having been around so long? How would you describe HP?
Um, yeah, it's interesting when you walk around campus. Actually, they've actually preserved Bill and Dave's office, so it's still got the oak finish. Very much what you would see, kind of like even predating Mad Men. And their offices are very much a snapshot in time. So you still have coins from the 50s and you still have ashtrays in their offices. And then effectively their two offices were next to one another, and there was no door between them. And so it kind of that whole like doors always open policy, like very true. They literally didn't have doors on their office. And so I think while certain things have certainly changed over the years, insofar as the technology and what we do, I think the spirit of Bill and Dave are still very much there, insofar as just being transparent with one another, with customers, with channel partners, etc. But I think the innovation has gone, far beyond what they had potentially even envisioned, you know, in the late 30s, early 40s, when HP kind of started to hit its stride early on. Now we're doing everything from the printers in the International Space Station, like things like that HP was a part of. So really incredible things. And then you take a look at how we're doubling down with some of our consumer technology that probably everybody listening in at some point, as you allude to, has had an HP laptop or a printer, or desktop, whatever the case may be, or even some of our newer to market products, or HP Sprocket that we carried for a while, which is a portable photo printer you could print right from your phone. Fun little pictures going back to the days that those of us who are a little bit older remember with Polaroids and actually print on demand, and being able to take it with you. So some really cool innovation over the years, and I think continuing to do more and more in a couple different areas, which we'll cover off on today, hopefully.
Yeah, awesome, and yeah, exciting to see a company like HP continuing to try new things and create new products and modernize. In your world of e-com, I'm curious, where HP is innovating, in the parts of the org that you drive.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen, certainly throughout COVID, we've seen people who have been stuck at home, and so we've done a lot of research to understand, what types of things they're doing and what they're most interested in. And so obviously, I think we've all seen collectively, gaming has become a much bigger phenomenon than it ever had been. And obviously, whether you look at consoles and the PS5 and the Xbox launching, or you look at traditional PC gaming and the huge rise that we've seen there, with Overwatch and 18-year-olds becoming multimillionaires playing Fortnite. It's been really incredible what we've seen in that space. And so, I think when we look at some different areas there, HP has been really quick with product innovation, and engagement with customers via, whether it's influencers or we sponsor the Omen Watch League. I think if we look holistically, gaming is definitely big. And then when you kind of take it to the next layer, when you're on a PC, how can HP engage more with you as a user than just selling you the actual product? And so we've developed something called the Oasis, which sits inside of our Omen PCs and which can be actually downloaded for people that don't have Omen PCs. But it's become this new ecosystem where you can, watch videos, understand the latest and greatest that's happening in the gaming ecosystem. If there's a game you want to buy, with electronic software delivery, you can actually make that purchase from directly within the Omen Oasis. And so, innovating like that, removing friction for customers, becoming kind of a one-stop shop, as it were, whether it's for information or reviews or the ability to go ahead and just download and play, whether it's a trial or a full-scale game. So we're making innovations in areas like that with Oasis. I think we're also looking at holistically, that personalization is something that I think we've all kind of gotten accustomed to over the last couple of years with a lot of the ads that were being served, whether it's Facebook or, programmatic display or just in general, it's become kind of the norm. And I think I'm taking that personalization and moving it from the advertising experience and moving it more towards the actual purchase experience. And so we've actually set up the Live Expert Center in, effectively it's in beta in Barcelona, and it's an area where you can actually have a one-to-one dialogue with somebody at effectively an HP store where they have the products there, and ask questions, and the rep on the other end, and just like this, they can show you the product without the fun background. Without the with the product, they can actually show it to you and answer questions. Do you want to know about the resolution? Do you want to know about how many ports it has? Do you want to see how fast it actually loads when you turn it on? And so I think, we're taking personalization a level beyond not just the marketing, but the actual user experience and figuring out how to do that in a one-to-one. And we're working obviously on a one-to-many environment as well. But I think that's a big piece. I think we're getting more into RPA, so effectively leveraging robotics or process automation to take tasks that had previously been a little bit more monotonous, particularly from the marketing side, and using those types of processes to streamline things. And so we can invest actual headcount and resources in other areas and use technology to do projects or smaller tasks that potentially had previously been done by hand. And so we're taking a lot of the innovation that we're seeing on the technology side, and we're reinvesting that into people, into resources that can actually help. And whether it's that creates one more live expert that can help you in real time, or whatever the case may be. A lot of stuff there. I would say, because people have been stuck at home as long as they have been, I'd say we're using AR a little bit more frequently. And so you'll see we're starting to use it in some of our email promotions and other areas on site, where you can literally just grab a QR code. Remember those things? Remember 2007 making a comeback? But you can literally just grab a QR code on your mobile device and see the actual product on your coffee table, on your computer table, and kind of get the full 3D rendering to understand, going back to earlier, how the size. You see, what does 15 inches really mean? What does 13 inches really mean? Where are the ports, etc. And so I think we're using those types of enhancements based upon, again, a lot of people being stuck at home. And now people are going out again, and so we have more people, obviously, foot traffic into stores. But I think, as a bridge, leveraging AR, and for the foreseeable future, other countries are not necessarily in the same position that we are in the U.S., where some countries are having their second, third wave, etc. And so, how do we enable those people to still be able to browse and engage with our products? So I think there's a lot that's happening there. And I think the other big move that we're making holistically is really around subscription. I think, we've certainly seen it with phones and other technology for a while. Obviously, everybody listening in probably has a Netflix or a Hulu or a Disney Plus or a Paramount, you name it. And so, things like subscription, a good example is our Instant Ink program, where the telemetry data from printers, we know when you're running low on ink. And for as little as 99 cents a month, HP can effectively, when you're running low on ink, will go ahead and send you more ink. And so, it's great from an environmental stance because you're not having to make the trip to the store to buy it anymore. It's great, obviously time is it will become more of a commodity again once everybody's out and doing things again. I'm saving you that time that you would have had to previously go out and purchase things. And so things along those lines. And I think most importantly is just around sustainability. It makes sure that when you actually finish a cartridge, you send it back to us and we're able to actually recycle it, refill it with ink, and make sure it's working in perfect form and send it back out to the next customer. And so I think, it fits on a variety of different levels. And I would be remiss in not talking about sustainability and diversity, Derek. So if you'll just bear with me, the woman who was speaking at EOS, it was great to hear about all the things that they're doing. But the sustainability message is certainly something that I think, we're actually really rolling up our sleeves and driving home. I think the executive team here you see at some companies, they talk about it, but they're not actually necessarily putting pen to paper, seeing how it can be done. And so for HP, that's really huge. Our supplies business is going to be carbon neutral by 2030. 75% of single-use plastics in our packaging will be eliminated by 2025. And so this isn't like a 30-year plan. This is, a couple years out. We've already saved 1.7 million ocean-bound plastics, insofar as actually using some of those plastics in our products. The laptop that I'm using right now, the outer shell is all made of ocean-bound plastics. And so and it looks great also. So you can feel great about like doing good and still having very stylish and functional products. And we've already achieved zero deforestation with HP brand paper. And so, it's what's already happening that we're doing great things, and what's kind of in the next 4 or 5 years. And then diversity is another one that I think is critical to us. And I think it's, we just had an all hands and they showed a picture from, I want to say it was around the 1940s or the 1950s. And it was great to see that, we had, the HP had, black Americans, black people, Asians, already in our company, in our fabric at that time, helping, innovate, helping bring great product to market. And so I think it's always been here, but certainly putting it down on paper, 50-50 gender equality and HP leadership by 2030, and 2x the number of Black and African American executives by 2025. So again, a lot of these things are right ahead of us. So, diversity and sustainability, obviously we're here to, make money as any publicly traded company, but I think we're thinking big picture or long-term as well. And so it's makes me really proud to be here. Anyway, I want to get that out there.
That's fantastic, Morgan. I appreciate the kind of breadth of innovation use cases you spoke to there. And I think a lot of us might think of HP in that legacy brand lens and not appreciate, all the opportunities that a company of HP scale has to kind of establish that model, do things quickly, and show other people that it's good for the business. So really exciting to hear that. A couple of things you talked to, I see the world through data, and especially first-party data. A couple of the things you talked about, I think correlated to things I hear a lot of customers talking about, which is, what the heck are we going to do with our third-party data? Shifting more to first-party data. Oftentimes that correlates with, and particularly in legacy brands, a shift towards doing more in D2C, and some companies trying to perhaps dramatically shift, from their legacy distribution models to more direct. Is HP one of those companies? Is HP trying to do most of their sales direct?
I mean, I think HP is just given our size and our distribution footprint, I think D2C is important to us, but we are and will remain for the foreseeable future. I mean, this is very much a channel-driven business. I mean, we've got huge partners in Best Buy, Amazon, Walmart, Office Depot, Staples. And, if you think about just how big their footprints are, without them, we would be obviously a fraction of our current size. And so, partners are absolutely critical to our business and will certainly remain. But I think there is, a subset of people who buy direct. Maybe I'm an outlier when I need to buy a Delta airline ticket. I go to delta.com. I don't go to Expedia or Orbitz. And, that's me. And so I think you look at the actual consumer set, and there's, some consumers that just for whatever reason sometimes like to go direct to the brand, and so we're out here to support those consumers. But for all intents and purposes, I mean, the business that we do with, again, some of those aforementioned and others that I failed to mention, is absolutely consequential in the lion's share of the business. But I think, it does, as you speak to data, it does open up some interesting opportunities insofar as, how do we enable them? How do they enable us? How do we work better together? Certainly with what's happening in the data ecosystem, and obviously third-party cookies going away, CCPA and some of the other things. I think it's CCPR is the next one that's coming eventually in a couple of years, and Florida's got their own stuff that's starting to become a thing. And so it's going to be really interesting, what brands are able to do with data, and how brands work better with partners, with this new data ecosystem that I think is very much in its infancy. I think we're actually going to be maybe going back a little bit insofar as technology and targeting. So it'll be an interesting renaissance, as it were.
Yeah, I think we'll all be learning together. I think as we launch into the brave new world of privacy around third-party data. I think ultimately we'll end up better off as both people who are trying to drive the business and consumers. So I'm excited about it, but there are still many unknowns, I think, as we look out ahead. Being in e-com and on the D2C side of the business, you're on the front lines of a lot of technical innovation. I'd love to hear if there's any particular kind of new tech that you're particularly excited by or think are worth others paying attention to.
Yeah, I mean, I think holistically, there's a couple different pieces that are important. I think if we look at measurement across the board, certainly we've been working in a post-attributed methodology for a while now, and it's effectively algorithmic right now what we do, but I think we're moving more and more towards like machine learning based models for investment and outcomes, and I think that that's going to become increasingly critical. I think just evolving in how you spend, and understanding the impact is going to become increasingly important over time. There's so many different ways to market these days. Understanding what's actually driving, an assist versus a conversion versus an introduction, and really understanding how all the different pieces fit together when you're overserving, when you're underserving, is going to continue to be critical. And so I think that's an area where we're constantly doing what we can do to stay on top of it. So I think moving into a more machine learning based model is going to be helpful there. I think we use different technology to make sure that we're not wasting on media. So we use third party called Check, and Check is effectively able to, on the first visit to a site, it's able to identify if traffic is authentic traffic or whether it's a bot. And so like very basic things like IP address, and if it's coming from a bad neighborhood, or if it says it's coming from, an Android 9.0, but it's Bluetooth 1.0, and you can't actually have a device that has Android 9.0 plus Bluetooth 1.0, like those technologies don't work together. And so, effectively using that type of technology to sniff out fake traffic, and then effectively we exclude them from our bidding, from our retargeting. And so things like that can save us money that we can go ahead and reinvest into real traffic and higher conversion. We use technology like Invoca effectively, so we can see when somebody's visiting the site and they call in, we can understand at the marketing channel level, which channels are driving traffic, which traffic converts. We can educate our call center associates to effectively train them at the one-to-one level, because Invoca can monitor the calls and see where they're potentially losing customers. Also things like what are the questions that customers are asking, and then we can take that, use those questions and feed it back into our chatbots, as well as the content on site. If we see questions are coming up frequently, that's something that we need to add to our content. And so a variety of different things there on voice and chat enabled AI. We use technology like movable ink to allow us to change the content of an email after it's already deployed, which is pretty cool. I think, things do go out of stock, prices do change. And so we really want to make sure a customer has an optimal experience when they interact with HP Collateral and HP as a brand. And so, if a product that was initially in the email when it deployed is out of stock, we can cycle that through with something that's new, and the customer won't be looking at an out of stock product and a CRM touch from HP, which is great. And then even things like Pebble Post, which I think are really It's funny how much what's dead is new again, just with a new spin on it. And so Pebble Post effectively allows us to use direct mail retargeting for people who visited the site. They look at a product and then they drop off. We can actually send them a physical direct mail within 48 to 72 hours. It'll be in their actual mailbox, and we get a second chance to engage with those customers. And so I think there's a lot of different technology that we've started to deploy in that capacity from a marketing stance. And I think HP's actually, we've made some really smart acquisitions of other technology brands, frankly, to help grow our business. We just completed the acquisition of HyperX, which makes a variety of different gaming peripherals to, again, going back to gaming, further embrace that audience and have the assortment that they need and that they want. And then obviously, as I alluded to, focusing on electronic software delivery and a couple other pieces as well. So holistically, I think there's a lot of exciting things that that we're working on, whether it's on the marketing front or the acquisition front, that kind of better prepare us for the future.
I love that, and I appreciate that. Kind of the thing that ties a lot of that together is this idea on what's good for the consumer experience. Speaking of old ideas that are perhaps new again, right? Just doing a great job with consumer experience, drives good things in the business, and I think it's sometimes easy to forget that that's what all this innovation is supposed to be for. And I think given what we've talked about around kind of the shift in third-party data, I think these things are going to matter more than ever, right? CACs are going to rise, and retention matters more than ever. And certainly, many of the customers that I'm talking to, given the nature of Amperity's business and helping companies, stitch data together from different parts of their business, obviously, e-com is an important piece of that. But oftentimes they're looking to kind of build their holistic customer data foundation from data sources all over the business. In many cases, when we're meeting with our customers, we're meeting with a collection of departments that don't always interact in the context of trying to build these data foundations. So I'm curious, for you being within the e-commerce space, how you think about data that you need from the business kind of outside of your core day-to-day.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So there's a variety of different data points that we have, obviously, from our marketing activities, and then people are on connected devices, and so there is telemetry data that we're able to get back from the devices, if something fails or whatever the case may be, so that we can go ahead and deploy a fix. There's, if you think about printing, which is big, I think, don't quote me on this, but I want to say a third of things printed in the US are printed, might even be more than that, are printed on HP printers. And so we've got a variety of data that we're able to obtain from that. And so I think when you think about the data that we have, so let's use printing as an example, the type of printing, are they printing documents? Are they printing photos? The time of printing, are they printing at night or during the day? And that gives us an idea of whether they're using it for work or home, whatever the case may be. Are they using HP ink, or are they using remanufactured ink? Is their printer offline? If somebody's printer's been offline for a while, then maybe it's broken. So, that obviously means maybe we should go ahead and send them an offer to purchase a new printer, or to contact support, whatever the case may be. So I think when you think about the data that we have, and that's just obviously printers, but like you look at the data that we have, and then you look at the data that a Walmart, for example, might have, time frame, online in store, are they purchasing competitor goods? Is there a seasonal pattern? Do they only purchase ink certain times of year, as an example? Thinking about like their persona, are they more budget, or are they, purchasing, potentially higher end goods? What's their cart size? Are they doing things via mobile? Are they doing things via desktop? What types of search queries are they putting in on Walmart.com, et cetera, et cetera. So if you take what we know and what Walmart knows, how do we put that together in a obviously legal capacity to ensure that the promotions that we're doing, for example, on a Walmart, are more effective and resonate well with the customer, because we're showing them a banner on Walmart that shows a printer printing pictures of a family versus a printer printing black and white documents. Little things like that that really do make a big difference. Getting customer eyeballs is getting to be more and more challenging compared to what TV used to be like when probably you and I grew up, Derek, where you actually had two knobs on the TV, and there was 12 channels, then you went to you, and there was a couple other channels that you couldn't really get, but they were there. Versus now, I mean, between what's being actually like over the air broadcast versus addressable TV that's coming out over the cable box versus what people are actually just streaming via Hulu, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like it's become so much more challenging, and so I think success is going to be how do we leverage our data that's we can permissibly use, and how do we merge that with any kind of partner data that's permissible to use, and develop optimal targeting and optimal experience. I don't think anybody's cracked the code yet. I think we're going to get there. I think when I look at partners, Walmart, an example, they're doing some really great stuff. I think they're working an integration with the trade desk. And so effectively anybody that has good experience in working with a DSP is going to better be able to leverage, the functionality within Walmart. And I think, a lot of these vendors are moving more towards a self-serve platform versus a managed service platform. And so I think people that have teams or themselves know how to actually, use the knobs, et cetera, are going to be really successful. And so I think it's probably part of it's going to be data, and part of it's going to be skill set that are going to drive success in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I strongly agree. We've had a lot of similar conversations, and have seen a real uptick in people's curiosity around this. I think step one is to figure out the data universe, and then I think there'll be a long period of us all learning to refine that and use that, which I think will be a very much a combination of art and science. So plenty of new innovation opportunities will be emerging in the coming years, which maybe I'll use as a segue to one last question before we jump into the Q&A. How do you see the next 1 to 2 years playing out, and maybe what are some of the things that you're doing to prepare?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think during lockdown, companies like HP, people were home. You had the idea of your child sharing a laptop when you've got two kids in the house. That went out the window. Everybody had to buy a laptop for each of their children. Those of us that used to only print at work, all of a sudden we needed a printer to print from home. Those of us that knew we were going to be stuck home for a while and didn't have a monitor, had to buy a monitor, had to buy a docking bay. Those of us that were stuck at home and remember gaming when we were younger, we found gaming to be entertaining again and had to go buy a gaming PC. And so I think it was from that stance, we saw this huge demand over the course of really the majority of the COVID period. And I think now everybody has that second laptop. People are slowly starting to return to the office. And so I think what we'll probably see will be a shift more probably to the B2B focus. I think there's going to be a lot of demand that starts to resurface there holistically. I think that there will be people that recognize the value of time even more now. And so I think things like subscription, as I alluded to with Instant Ink, will become increasingly important to us and to the ecosystem as a whole. I think to thrive, everybody is going to have thought through subscription. I think the other thing is that we see people being locked at home. The rise, influencers had always been big, but I take a look at, I watched this couple, Kara and Nate, and they traveled all around the world during COVID and or prior to COVID, and they did great videos. And for the last year and a half, they've been in a Mercedes Sprinter van traveling the country. And their viewership has like doubled or tripled over the last year and a half. And so when I think about something like that, I think about, who are the right influencers that we need to be doing more with? And then not just that, but when you think about shopping and social shopping and social commerce, I think the ability to really take it from the influencer to actually drive a direct purchase, not just to drive awareness. I think the technology has started to come together. I think you see it really, it's illustrated well in fashion, and in a couple other areas. But I think how do everyday products that don't fit into fashion, beauty, et cetera, how do we start to tap into that? And I think, partners like Instagram and Facebook and TikTok, who've obviously made big investments there. I think there's a lot of opportunity there that we're just starting to get into. I feel like that probably is where a lot of the opportunity lies. And then I think finally the marketplace piece, excuse me, and the store within a store. You've got Target Plus is becoming a bigger thing. You look at the growth Walmart has seen in grocery. If you're not part of Walmart grocery, for example, how do you get your products in that customer's mindset? Like, hey, I can buy this from Walmart and just add it to my order and it'll get delivered with my milk and my eggs, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think there's a couple different opportunities, but I think that component around convenience and how to brands tap into everyday conveniences that people have become accustomed to. So the grocery component, I think the social component, influencers, and actually tying it all through the full purchase funnel, having a data driven and being able to see all the pieces is going to be pretty critical.
Awesome. Well, Morgan, I appreciate the conversation. We've taken it all the way from HP's legacy to televisions with knobs to influencer marketing. So I feel like we covered a pretty wide space. We've got a handful of questions that have flown in. We've got about 8 minutes left in the session. So I'm going to try and get to as many of these as possible, starting with the one that's come in most recently here. In your opinion, will every company ultimately insource all media buying as they figure out how to handle these data sets?
I was just at the pool reading an Ad Age or Ad Week yesterday, and they were just talking about that, how obviously what Unilever and what other major brands have done. I think there will be, I think your tried and true channels, your paid search, your display, for example, I think a lot of those are going to get insourced over time. We have an agency internally called ZG that does a lot of our media for us right now. We still do leverage agencies. I think there will always be an opportunity for agencies. I think it will probably be more surgical. Let's talk influencers. For a brand like HP to go ahead and build their own influencer collective and leverage them appropriately and have tagging, et cetera, we could. But are we better off working with like a Gen Video or a company that just deals with influencers? I think for all intents and purposes, the ROI on doing that is potentially better than us doing it in-house ourselves. And so I think it's going to be very surgical. What channels make sense to insource versus what channels make sense. And I also think it's going to vary regionally. In some markets like Japan, for example, it's more challenging to, if you want to do something big in Japan, you have to work with Dentsu or a Japanese-based agency. And so I think it's going to vary a little bit regionally. So there's no one-size-fits-all solution, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. Jumping to the next question, how does HP interpret the emerging retail media offerings from top retailers? Is it a legitimate opportunity to drive more effective ad spend, or is it purely a quote-unquote partnership play that keeps you in the good graces of the retailer?
No, I mean, I think that it's a necessity. I think while Google is obviously huge for search and we're a huge partner and they do great business with us, I think if you look at Amazon, at Walmart, at Target, et cetera, all of them, it again actually starts with search. But I think, for you to rise above the competition, you need to play actively in those spaces. It's not going to happen purely organically. You have to figure out where your segments are spending their time and figure out what media within those given walled gardens or within those given partner networks are going to yield the best ROI. I mean, you look at like Target's done with Roundel, you look at Walmart bringing in, all their media used to be through Triad, and then obviously Walmart Media Group, and it's now all in-source, and they're moving towards a self-serve model. I think again, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all, but it's not hyperbole. Like brands need to, brands that don't only sell direct, brands that sell through channel need to invest in channel to be successful in channel. And I think, channel also wants to see brands sell so that they continue to invest. And so, I think you need to be smart about negotiations. I think there might be slots that you can get as value adds when you do a negotiation instead of having to pay for them. I think there's the data piece that I alluded to earlier. Is there some data element that they can provide that'll make your targeting and your messaging more effective? But I think 100% you need to play in the space. You can't only play on Facebook and only play on Google. If you're a multi-channel retailer.
That makes sense. Jumping to the next question here, what are your thoughts on shoppable media with respect to driving conversion at key retailers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good opportunity. I think if you look at Instagram, is probably one of the brands that's done a decent job with making media more shoppable. And I think as a retailer, as a multi-channel retailer, brands are effectively going to have to decide either, in the future. Right now, I think you can really only choose one retail outlet. If somebody is going ahead and doing something on Instagram, for example, like they can only buy, from HP or from Best Buy. It could be an HP product, but we want them to feature it being available on Best Buy. What I think is going to happen in the future, and what I think you already see in some of the where to buy functionality, such as what's offered by Channel Advisor, is HP can have a product, and the consumer can choose which retailer they want to purchase it from. Some people have an affinity towards Target. We want to make sure that we're helping those customers. Some people have an affinity towards Walmart. We want to make sure that we're helping those customers, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, with shoppable content over time, still enabling that level of choice is going to become really imperative. Not everybody wants to buy direct. We buy a ton at Costco because we love their warranty. And so as for my family, if I can buy it at vendor X versus Costco, maybe I would buy it at Costco if they're going to double the warranty. And so you really need to be there for everybody.
Fantastic. I think we might have time for just one more question. I think this is kind of an interesting one, given that we probably all struggle to figure out how to spend the time in our day that we have outside of everything that needs to get done. How do you determine where to spend time on emerging technologies?
I would like to say that I spend at least an hour a week looking at new vendors. I don't. I tell my team they should spend at least an hour a week looking at new vendors. They don't. And so I think it's honestly a little bit. It's probably my biggest challenge or my biggest pet peeve with myself, aside from being verbose, is not carving out the time to see kind of what's around the bend. And so it's attending events like this where I hear about it. I do speak to a few VC firms, and I do these 15-minute lightning rounds with some of their companies. And so I find that actually to be advantageous. If you can carve out 30 minutes once a month and look at two companies, it's a start, right? And I think, but I think that's where if I had more hours in the day, that's where I would like to spend it. Is there's so much new technology, there's so many game changers that are out there. Sometimes they never make their way through the front door. And so taking a look at that spam folder every once in a while, and actually looking at some of the emails that vendors are sending when you can spare the time. But I think it's just making some level of commitment to yourself and being able to execute on it.
Fantastic. Well, Morgan, that was a lot of fun for me to have a chance to chat with you. Lots of really great insights. Very much appreciate your time and sharing your expertise with the audience today.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Morgan and Derek, what a great discussion. Thank you both so much for joining us. I loved hearing about how HP has transformed over the years and adapted its commerce channels over the evolving climate. We'll have to have both of you back